Okay, in this video, we're gonna look at how we can install ComfyUI on your computer to be able to run it locally and be able to follow all the tutorial I'm putting out there and all the tutorial about ComfyUI. ComfyUI is a very powerful UI, user interface, that you can use for a lot of things, to make videos, to make image, to use different models. You can use to make image, you can use Flux, you can use Stable Diffusion, you can use a lot of them, which is quite amazing. You can use Florence to analyze your images and get prompt from these images. Anyway, there's a lot to do with ComfyUI. It's very worth learning it. And in this video, I'm gonna show you how to install it on your machine and get it running. Okay, so before we go too deep into find this tutorial, there's one things you need to know. Actually, there's a couple of things you need to know. First things you need to know is if you want to run ComfyUI and Stable Diffusion and Flux and eventually like Stable Diffusion 3.5 and Flux Dev 1, etc. All those models, they will require a lot of power from your graphic cards, a lot of RAM from your graphic cards. Now the RAM is different from the RAM, and the RAM is basically how much gigabyte your graphic cards has built in. So, for example, on the machine I'm wearing here at the moment, I upgrade to a 4090 recently, which has 24 gigabyte of RAM. Now, if you go before, I was using RTX 3060 Ti with only 8 gigabyte of RAM, and that was enough to run Stable Diffusion, but it was quite slow. So if you the first things I recommend, if you want to get onto AI and explore a bit and experiment with it, I would say that don't even bother installing it on a computer with less than 8 gigabyte of RAM on your graphic cards, because the results in architecture, we're going to use different layer. We're going to use control net that will help us to control the output of the image, but we're also probably going to use a LoRa that will sort of help the main model to get more accurate results or more results that we want to use. And these two combines can be can require a lot of RAM in your graphic card. So as a starting point, if you don't have at least 10 gigabyte of RAM, I think there's no point of installing it on your machine. There are some alternatives you can use online. You can use RunPod, is a very good alternative, quite cost efficient, where you only rent a GPU online and you can just sort of use only what you or pay only what you use. And I think it's a very interesting process. I'll put a link below in the description. Also, other alternative like TensorArt that is also able to host ComfyUI, but it's quite limited. The good thing is they've got a free sort of start, so you can get your head around and do some tests and see if you like it before you sort of invest in a graphic card or you invest in time to run a RunPod. Something to keep in mind with ComfyUI is I feel it's only the beginning. Like there's so much that is still coming up, and one big thing that is coming slowly is text to video and image to video that you can actually manage locally. So at the moment the results are not quite there, so we are like January 2025, but looking back at the evolution of AI, I think it's by July is probably going to be something possible. Also, the new graphic cards from Nvidia just been released, the 50 series, and they are quite powerful, and they're built for AI. So I think there's a shift there that is starting to happen, and hopefully the cost will go down so you can afford a graphic card that can accommodate it. But in the meantime, just keep in mind 10 gigabyte of RAM, 8 as a bare minimum to sort of go and have a play with it. And then I highly recommend, if you want to get into it, to invest into like 16 or even 24 gigabyte of RAM graphic cards. Okay, so the first things I want you to do and have a look at is click on the first link I have below in the description, and it will point you out to GitHub and ComfyUI. So I'm sure you're already familiar with GitHub. In case you're not, the first time I jump in, I'm not coming from a developer or coder. I'm an architect, and I was just like, and used to use Mac, so I used to be like really far away from any um, computer things related stuff. So, so it was really overwhelming when I first started using it. But now, like like it just gets used to the interface. You used to how it looks like and what you want out of GitHub. It's an amazing platform, amazing community, and it's basically everything you need will be on GitHub for ComfyUI. So ComfyUI, again, it's sort of it's an interface that look like this, and we're gonna look in a couple of those videos, but we're gonna look at how we can add like some add-ins and all those type of things to look really nice and crisp. But it's a node-based interface, so I like it because I come from Grasshopper and Rhino, and that reminds me Grasshopper, and I just love the idea of building a workflow in there, so highly recommend it. So here we go. So installing ComfyUI, fairly simple. What it here mentioned are like you can use any model. So that's also very interesting with ComfyUI. What we are installing today is a user interface, a UI, right? So it's not Stable Diffusion or Flux or a model or whatever. It's an interface that we're gonna use. And this interface is extremely popular. There's a lot of YouTube video, a lot of channels, amazing ones across the internet that are describing all what's happening in there and how to use them. And some of them are just amazing. So with ComfyUI, you can of course using image models, so which is basically what what I've been focusing on in my different videos. So, and then they basically run every single model you can imagine that are open source. So we've got Stable Diffusion 1 all the way 1.5 to, then you get Stable Diffusion XL, Stable Cascade, Stable Diffusion 3, Stable Diffusion 3.5, etc., etc., etc. Pixar Alpha and Sigma, I never use those ones. Auraflow. Yuyan is more for videos. They've been doing a lot here, but it's also like they're really good for video. And then we have Flux as well. And then again, video, we've got Stable Video Diffusion, we've got Moshi that I've tried, really nice. LTX as well is coming out, and Yuan. So again, we're talking about an interface, ComfyUI, that is able to host not only image generation, but also video generation. So you can really merge everything into one. And that's also why I think it's a very nice software interface to learn, because it's got all these amazing tools that are open source and that can be run on that interface. So as soon as you get familiar to the interface, you can do pretty much anything really. But there's other things that are quite interesting. Stable audio. So if you want to generate some audio, there's like a lot of way to optimize your GPU. Of course, you can use all the LoRa's. There's inpainting, upscaling, a lot of different things. And also there are like the tools that are able, like Florence, for example, that are able to show it in the previous video. This one here, I'll just put the link below in the description, when I use it with Revit, where I actually ask Florence to give me a prompt out of an image. So this is also can be run locally on your machine using ComfyUI. So you see like how much things you can actually pack into ComfyUI. So that's why learning it is, I think, extremely valuable, especially for the future. Yeah, so shortcuts, we're just gonna run through that. We don't really need. What we're really interested about is the installation. Simply download this. So I'm gonna click on the link, download it. It's just gonna pop up here. And then extract the zip and run it. Make sure you put your stable diffusion checkpoint model, UGN. Okay, so we'll talk about all that after. If you have trouble, unblock. Okay, so the second things we want to do is we want to download Python. So if you click below in the link, I have the link below to Python. I'm just gonna bring it up here. So it's basically this version here, 3.10. And then you can just go installer. So I'm using Windows 11, and then you just click on this one and you download the installer. Then there's something else you need to install, and it's called Git. Okay, so if you have the link again below in the description, Git, and the link will point you out to the right version. Standalone, this one here will do. So you click on this one, and it will also download. All right, so now that you have installed, like download everything, we're gonna start with Python. So we're just gonna click on this Python, and then you can just basically go by default. So I have it already installed here on my machine, but I'm just gonna show you here through this process. So you just go, everything basically by default works. The only things you really need to be aware of, and this is very important, is you need to tick that box, add Python to environment variable. If you don't do this, it will likely not work, and it will not work properly. So you really need to tick that box, and then install it. You can install it anywhere on your machine. Like I have, for example, Python installed on my main drive, but I'm running Stable Diffusion on a separate drive. So, like it doesn't really matter as far as I know. So you can just keep it simple and then install it with your app, and then you click on install. So I already have it installed, so I'm not going to do it again, but this is the process. Okay, so now we've got Python installed, and then we have ComfyUI download, and now we're just going to install Git. To install Git, you click on Git, so you just installed, you click on the exe file, it'll ask you to open it, and then you can just go through. So again, I already have it installed. I'm just gonna not sort of reinstall it, but you just click on next. There's nothing to change about Git, and it will just sort of install it properly. So I'm just not gonna install it, just so that I'm not messing up with everything. But that's how you install Git. All right, now that you have Git and you have Python installed, the last step, we're gonna install ComfyUI. So as you can see, it's about 1.5 gig. And what I like to do is I just like to copy it. Copy this folder, and then like have a couple of things, have a lot of things actually. But what I will copy it in, as I have a full SSD that is sort of dedicated to AI, and then under AI, I have my ComfyUI, Automatic 11, like I have a couple of things, not Midjourney, that's only the output of the images, but this is where my ComfyUI is. So I just paste my portable. So as soon as you have it there, you can just change the name, or you can just unzip it. So I change the name here to ComfyUI because I don't need the old things. And then the ComfyUI desktop is actually the app. So I'm testing the beta version of the app, which is quite good. So should help with the installation of ComfyUI in the future. Everything is built into the app, and I'm looking forward for it to become public. But I'll probably gonna do a video about it when it comes out as a public. So anyway, I changed the name here. I'll delete it later. And then when you have it there, you see I have it as a Windows portable. And then here, if you use a CPU, it's going to be very, very slow. So I don't recommend to use the CPU. But if you have an NVIDIA GPU, which is what we're talking about before in the video, so just double click on this one, and this is it. And this is sort of you starting ComfyUI. So that's as simple as this. So this window will appear, and then it just sort of like go and run your ComfyUI, and then we'll see there's a couple of things that will happen. That's it. So the interface should look like this. So you have here at the top here the address, and here it looks like this. So the default script, you're gonna have a default script. It might not be look like this one. I think this one is one of mine, but it doesn't matter. You might have a checkpoint, something else, and then we have a clip encoder, which is basically your prompt. And then because here I'm using Flux and I'm not using Stable Diffusion SDXL, I also have a guidance. And then we've got the case sampler for all the models. Usually you have a case sampler. There's a couple of settings in there, and then we have a VAE decoder. It will help with the decoding, decoding the case sampler, and then we have save image. And then here the latent image is basically the size of my image I'm going to generate. So if, for example, here I'm just like sort of run it, if I want to run this default scripts, which I recommend you to do. So if I click on Q, if it doesn't recognize, if it doesn't have the checkpoint, it's because you don't have a model download. So I'm just going to show you how to download the model and where you can find it. So if, for example, if I'm going back to my Comfy folder, I'll need to go into my Comfy folder here, and then under here you've got a bunch of folder. Really, the one you really want to focus on, outputs and models. All the others, I've been using ComfyUI for the last, I don't know, 2 years, and never used them. So outputs, great. That's where all your images will sort of land. Okay, so this is where all your project, every image you save here by default will land in this folder, which is fantastic. So that's the output. And then what we are interested about is the model. Now, model can be also overwhelming, a lot of folder in there, but really the one we're going to focus on is the checkpoint. So you're going to have here under checkpoints, and then here I have my checkpoints. So as you can see, I have SDXL model, SD 1.5, SD 3.5, Sana, and Flux. So here the one I'm using now is Flux. So I have here a safe tensor that I just paste in that folder. SDXL, I got a couple of them as well. And each of those one model will use a slightly different workflow. So it's important to have them sort of working with the workflow. So if I go to Flux, for example, where do I find this? So this one is the FP8. So I can show you a bit. So if I just click here, I'll put the link below in the description. But basically, you can download it from Hugging Face, or you can download it from Civita AI. It doesn't matter. And so when you click on this, this is the Flux One Dev FP8. That's the one I used to use, I think, with my 8GB of RAM graphic card. That was still quite efficient. And it's a fairly big file. But then you just click on download, and it will just download in the background. As soon as you download it, what I like to do is under this, just write if it's Flux or if it's a Stable Diffusion, create a folder to capture that. Basically, if it's Flux, you just create a new folder and call it Flux, and then you paste it in there. And if it's spaced in the right location, when you go back to your ComfyUI here, and you have load checkpoint, it will show up here on this list. Now, usually it doesn't show straight away. So you need to actually restart it. So to restart it, you can just because you don't have the manager, you can just close. So you download it, it's ready here, it's downloading. Take a while, so I'm not gonna do it. And then I'm going back to my folder, ComfyUI, and I'm going back to my folder here and double click on it, and this will sort of restart ComfyUI. So we're gonna install now a manager that will help us to streamline this process, so you don't have to close and open it every time you use ComfyUI, but this is sort of the process. All right, so here is what we need to do. So we have now a workflow that is working. We have installed our checkpoint under the folder. We have a bit of a prompt. We have some things. We're going to talk a bit more about the case sampler and things like that. In some of the video, I'm just going more in detail of like what's happening for the output I want. But this is overall the installation process. Now, there's something different in the new ComfyUI is I need to see the manager. So then the manager, I thought it was installed, but apparently it's not installed. So I'm just going to try again and I'm just going to install it. So the reason I want to install the manager is it's going to help a lot. Like if you have a script or if you download the script from somewhere else and then you drop it into ComfyUI, it will generate the nodes and everything. However, if you're missing some plugins, the manager will actually help you to install the missing plugins and the missing components. So the manager is very essential into ComfyUI. In the new desktop version, it's already packaging in, but in this one, you still need to manually sort of install, and that's where we install Git. So I'm just gonna go here. There's the link below in the description where you can click on it and you access the manager. The manager looks like this. So all what you have to do is the installation method is you go to your ComfyUI custom node and then the terminal and you install git clone this part here. So I'm just gonna go to my Explorer. So here I have my ComfyUI under this one. So I'm going here in this folder. So that's the folder we just installed. And then here under here, model. And then under here, I'm just gonna go into my custom folder. Actually, it might be under ComfyUI, not models. So, you know, when I was saying not using any of the other folder, well, actually, this is the first example that I'm wrong. I'm actually using the other folder for this one specific case. And here is the custom, so it's just the custom node folder. So it's this folder here. I'm just going to double click on this. And then here I have a lot of different custom nodes with my ComfyUI. You're probably not gonna have as much. I'm just gonna go and type here CMD. So I'll tap CMD here at the top. So I make sure I'm in the right folder, which is ComfyUI custom node. And now I'm only gonna go and copy this part here. So I'm just take this one, right click, Control C, sorry. Control C, and then here I'm just going to this one, and then here Control V. Okay, so apparently I don't have Git install. I have this error message. So let me go back to my Git, and let's reinstall Git. And I'm just gonna install, just to make sure, I'm just gonna install it in the same folder as software. I'll save it here in the same disk. Shouldn't. And here I can do next, and install. And let's see if it works. Interesting. Okay, so I'm just paste it now under git clone, and there we go. So what happened is actually I had it installed it already, so I just sort of screw up a bit on the process. Now that should be done, and now in this folder I could see here that I should have now my manager here under here. So if I go back, so I need to close my terminal. And then I go back here, and I also close on that. So I close my Comfy. I can close my terminal, go back here, and I reinstall everything. So I'm just going back, or relaunch everything, sorry. So I'm going here. Here I just double click on this one, ComfyUI, so GPU, and then I double click on it. All right, so now that we have installed the manager, you should see it here up at the top here. So if I click on manager here, I have a whole bunch of options. I'm not going to run through all of them here. What's interesting to look at is, for example, the update all. So if you click on update all here, it will update everything on your ComfyUI. And what we're going to look at here is just open gallery. So if you open gallery, so you can right click here and select another one. Basically, open gallery will just point you out towards like a website. So let's say Flux Upscale, for example. If I click on this one and I download this, just select it. So it was this one, I drop it here. And now what it tells me is there is a missing node, and it's this one here. So if I click on this, it will show me here in red that I don't have this specific node. And that's where the manager is very helpful, is you click on manager and then you go through and you look at install missing custom nodes. So if I click on this, it will tell me missing, will tell me you're missing this specific node. So I can tick on this and then click install, or click install here. It doesn't matter. If you have more than one, you can click on that, select them all and click on this. In the background, it's downloading all the components here. And there we go. And now it's installed, and all what I have to do is restart. So I click on restart, and then it will start it again, reboot your ComfyUI, so you don't have to close it and reopen it. So now reconnecting. So if I enter it, okay, so now we can see the node that I just downloaded is now no more red, and we have everything sort of all the settings in there. So this is how it looks like now. And then if I look at the upscale and if I queue it, it will give me a series of error because it probably missed a couple of things. So I can just have a look and look at what's missing. So all the elements in red are the things that I'm missing. So obviously I don't have an image just yet in there. LoRa's, I'm missing some LoRa's here. They use very specific LoRa's that I didn't download, so I can probably go on Civita AI. I'll just copy that in Google, and then I can find it on Hugging Face. I'll probably find like those LoRa's to download. Sometimes here, for example, sometimes you might not recognize because I have them in the folder, so I might just need to select them. But other than that, it looks pretty good to me. So I can just download this LoRa and then run it, and it should work as the workflow showed. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you managed to install it on your machine locally, so then you can follow along all the tutorial I made and other people's tutorial. I think there's a lot of content in there, and I think ComfyUI is really the starting point. So I'll probably do another video when the desktop version is available for everybody, but in the meantime, this should take you anywhere. And if you're interested to, about architecture and AI overall and how to use ComfyUI in your architecture process, feel free to subscribe and follow along. And there's also the Discord channel down below, which is more, I guess, about architecture. Until the next video, ciao.